We're not talking about the best of them. We're just talking about the rest of them.
Not the worst parts, but the best parts. And the best parts we have. The best of the rest.
Hello, and you are a beautiful motherfucker. Welcome to Best of the Rest, the show where we take a second look at movies that were poorly received upon release and challenge ourselves to only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. This week, we are talking the 2018 film, The Predator. My name is Chris Logan, and I am joined, as always, by the Andrew Williams. Are you ready for this one, Andrew?
I am indeed. It's rolling all along in our Predator Alien month. So let's dive into the most recent shot at the Predator. Or
yeah,
not,
as of this
now.
recording, the most recent shot. But
as of this recording, yes, Prey hasn't come out yet. But I think by the time this episode airs, Prey will have come out. So, yeah. But I'm excited to talk about it.
And hopefully, Prey is awesome. Did you like it, listener? Have you seen it? What do you think? That's good news. I can't wait to watch it. But today, it's all about The Predator, as you said, as Alien Predator Month rolls along. Our theme for this month. Let's go ahead and just dive in, Andrew. This movie was released September 14th of 2018. Made on a budget of $88 million. At the box office, it only brings in $160 million. That is well below expectations, well below what they wanted. Financially, just not great, as I think is the technical term. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a critic score of 33%, which is pretty low, even for this franchise about murdering aliens, Andrew. Not well received.
Not at all. And you can actually, this might be odd, but the audience score is also 33%.
Wow, extremely rare for the audience score not to be higher, even just a little bit higher.
This is a rare instance where the audiences and the critics seem to be in complete alignment, that 2/3 of them don't know what the other third are talking about.
Let's talk about the creative team behind the movie. It's written by Shane Black and Fred Dekker. Let's take a look at Fred Dekker's credits really quick. He was the writer and director of Night of the Creeps, The Monster Squad, which he co-wrote with Shane Black, and RoboCop 3, which looks like Shane Black got some creative influence on that as well. So they are frequent collaborators. Fred Dekker doesn't have quite as many credits to his name as his friend Shane Black there, but some, high-profile stuff, some well-received stuff scattered throughout there.
Yeah, he's got he's got a story credit on House, and he's also got a story credit on its sequel, which is my pick for the greatest sequel title of all time, House 2: The Second Story.
I agree. I completely agree. Perfect title. It is the antithesis
no better title for that to be
of I Will Never Forget What You Did Last Summer.
No, it is the antithesis of it. It's got some uncredited work on Demolition Man, which, you and I are both huge fans of.
Greatest movie of all time.
So, yeah, and, wrote some episodes of Tales from the Crypt, wrote some episodes of Star Trek Enterprise, so he's been out there for a while, just doing his thing. A lot of script doctor work in there, but no stranger to working with Shane Black. This is his first genuine writing credit on a film in a long time beyond a story credit. So, and Shane Black was just going back to his roots there, looking for some collaboration.
Now, Shane Black also directs this movie. Shane Black has a very long, prolific career in Hollywood, kind of in two parts. Breaks in as a writer, most notably on Lethal Weapon, kind of getting his name out there. Plenty of credits scattered throughout high-profile stuff like Last Action Hero and Long Kiss Goodnight. And then he kind of disappears for a minute and comes back as a writer-director. Wears the additional hat when he comes back with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, a movie that I know, Andrew, you and I both absolutely adore. I mean, it's got two of the greatest actors of all time in that movie. If you've never seen it, go seek it out. Also writes and directs Iron Man 3, which I do enjoy. I know that might be controversial, but I think it's a good one.
My hot take is Iron Man 3 is a little underrated. I don't think people give it the credit it deserves.
I agree. Also writer and director of The Nice Guys, greatest movie. We throw around this greatest movie of all time thing a lot, but let's try to be less hyperbolic. I still think it's one of the best movies of the past 20 years. I mean, it's up there.
It's a movie that I can put on at any time, and I'm pulled back into it. It's a movie that I genuinely love. I am sad that there are not 7 Nice Guy sequels already.
100%.
We as a society, that might be the triggering incident that leads us down the path we're on, Chris. This movie comes out in 2016 and nobody went to see it.
Boy.
But no, I love The Nice Guys. It's a great movie. Again, 2 of the greatest actors of all time in it. So
it has that secret sauce, that je ne sais quoi, if you will, the same thing that Knives Out has, where it's like it's just greater than the sum of its parts, and it's got great parts, but like it has this extra quality. Like you said, I can put it on at any time. I can always get invested in it. I can't wear it out. It is just so good.
I agree. It's completely and utterly so. It's just so good, and the script is great. The characters are great. Everything about it just comes together. But like you said, it's great parts that should result in a great outing, and it goes above that. Like you said, it is genuinely greater than the sum of its parts.
Now we are getting more Knives Out movies. We're getting more Benoit Blanc movies. So here's my prediction. Whenever the Knives Out sequel comes out, pandemic's over, baby. It's gonna right us. We're gonna be right on the back on the right track. There won't be a single COVID diagnosis after
from that day
Knives
forward.
Out 2 is released.
I'm into that. I'm fine
heard
with
it
that.
here first.
I think okay. But yeah. So either way, based off of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Iron Man 3, and The Nice Guys, when they announced Shane Black was writing and directing a Predator movie, a bit of a return to the Predator franchise for him, no less, after being one of the featured characters in the original, I was pretty hyped for that.
Man, I agree. And I got to say, I did not see this movie in theaters. I think you did, Andrew. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. So wait, that sounded super dejected. Sorry.
Well, I mean, look, here's the thing. Our podcast is all about focusing on the positives, right? Digging in, finding what works. You've heard our show before, I'm sure, listener. But we admit that it can be a challenge. And so we're not always trying to convince you that the movies we're watching are awesome. I mean, we are sometimes. Like Time Cop is great. Go see it. But we're not trying to pretend like every movie is great, just that they have great parts. What I'm getting at is the legacy of this movie is that it's not great. Fans of the Predator franchise did not accept it. People new to the franchise, or I should say, it didn't bring any new fans into the franchise. Shane Black fans do not enjoy this movie. This movie's legacy is not good at all.
No.
And
it is not.
This is going to be one of those episodes that is genuinely a challenge. Like, I'll just kind of say that up front, because my instinct whenever I go to talk about this movie, especially with you, Andrew, we talk about movies all the time, is to kind of start jumping into some negative stuff and stuff I didn't like and where it takes the franchise. But you know what? That's why the hashtag Positive Podcast is so important. Because the internet is already filled with those conversations, Andrew. Those conversations are much easier to have. It's much easier to rip a movie apart that you don't enjoy. And if that's what you want to hear, go on YouTube. It's there, I promise. There's a bunch of videos doing just that. I think it's harder to find a video that's going to highlight the things that work. And that is what we aim to do today. Andrew, are you up to this challenge?
Yes.
Emphatic. Yes, we're about to cross this threshold.
I just don't agree. I agree with your point. I think it would be disingenuous to avoid the reality, but at the same time, like you said, it's easy to find negativity. It is a lot harder to dig in and find the positivity a lot of times, especially when it comes to things that are widely maligned. There's a lot of stuff that flies under the radar, and yeah, you'll see I was just, ironically enough, I was revisiting a movie I love called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which is a rather unknown Ben Stiller vehicle from 2013 or so. And it came out, and I think it's literally like a 45 on Rotten Tomatoes. Everyone's like, the scope is its reach is greater than it can handle. Basically, it tries to do too much. None of it lands, and I disagree with that completely. But I was able to find a bunch of videos of people that like actually were like rewatching the film and like disagreeing and actually being like, I think people misunderstood this. But that's something that flew under the radar. That's not a massive blockbuster franchise. With stuff like Predator, or Star Wars, or whatever, and a movie comes out that doesn't land like people thought it would, it's easy to find, oh, here's all the things it did wrong. You know, there's a whole YouTube channel that is dedicated to everything wrong with a movie. It's literally the point. And, you know, there isn't a positive version of that. You know, there's nobody out there trying to defend these things. It's not that we're defending them, but just that there are things that are good. There's always things that are good. And like you said, we're going to find them. And I'm up to the task, Chris.
Andrew, you bring up that YouTube channel. I'm sure most people know what you're talking about, but just to continue to drive this point home, I was at the store the other day. I was at Target. I was browsing through the movies, and two young men came up and they looked at the movies, and one asked the other, "Is like, oh, have you seen that yet?" And the response was, "No, but I saw that YouTube channel's video on it," and that was like, and they just like moved on. He's like, "Oh, basically, I don't need to see that movie. I don't want to see that movie because I saw this video on it," and
that's just really sad.
Yeah, like I'm not passing judgment on these young men, if you're, you know, but that's I want to be the opposite of that. How about that? That's kind of the goal of this podcast.
I agree. I think it's like I said, it's easy to be negative at the end of the day. It's easy to just sit and, you know, talk about how awful things are, but it's a different thing to kind of rewire your brain to look for the positives instead. And that's genuinely what it kind of is. And I'm no exception to that. You know, I grew up as a cynical 20-something going to the movies and just doing the whole, ugh, God, like just that guy. I really was like a genuine recovering movie snob, but it's really easy to be negative. It's harder to be positive. But I think when you look at things positively, it genuinely changes how you view, it extends beyond the movies, to put it that way, not to get too deep into it.
Well, let's get deep into this one, Andrew. The Predator. While being pursued through space, a Predator ship crash lands on Earth, interrupting a U.S. Army mission. The Predator quickly dispatches of the soldiers, save for Quinn McKenna, who not only survives, but steals some alien weapons and mails them back home for safekeeping. Both McKenna and the Predator are apprehended by Project Stargazer, a secret task force that monitors Predator activity on Earth. After the Predator escapes the facility and seeks to retrieve his weapons, McKenna breaks out as well with the help of a motley crew of U.S. veterans. When a much larger Predator arrives and kills the original alien, McKenna and his unit must join forces with the Stargazer task force and uncover the Super Predator's motives and stop their plan before it's too late.
It's a deep movie.
A number of twists and turns in this in this plot synopsis. And I will say, first positive thing to throw out there, this movie notoriously had a lot of changes and reshoots and entire scenes and subplots cut out. And I think at the end of the day, you do see some of that in the end product, but I think it comes together. I think despite all that, it's still easy enough to like to follow the plot from A to B. And you can read about like subplot stuff that were cut. Like some of it's like pretty major, and if you know what to look for, you might see some of the lingering elements in the movie. But I think considering how much they changed gears after this principal photography was shot, I think they still land on a new story being told, and you're able to grasp that story. I think it's a lot of movies get chalked up like that and become
almost incomprehensible.
Yes, yeah. And I think
Jinx, show me a Coke.
Goes beyond that, so I'll give the movie credit for that.
No, I agree. There's movies that you've seen that you hear about. You like take Justice League for example. Like ultimate result aside, you can tell that that's the vision of two distinct different directors. Like
Yeah.
you can tell when it's switching between. You can tell that there's just two things at war with each other in that movie that are not the Justice League and Steppenwolf. And it's I see what I did there. Good for me. But with this, like I said, I do agree. It is a movie that has a lot of post. I see this as I don't know if it does it quite as well as something like say Rogue One, where there was a lot of post production and shifting and changing in Rogue One, where that movie still comes out friggin' awesome. But this movie still finds a way to feel cohesive and not feel like a movie that's been chopped to bits and kind of poorly reassembled.
Before we jump into those scenes, we're going to talk about the cast of this movie, as we always do, and we're going to start with the high point with the best casting, best performance of the film. Every episode, we recognize one person who goes above and beyond what's being asked of them, and they end up raising the quality of the entire film with their performance. We recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. Andrew, go ahead and kick us off here. Who gets your Mark Strong Award in The Predator?
There's a big cast here, but I'm going to go with Sterling K. Brown as Will Traeger. So he's essentially
Awesome pick.
Sterling K. Brown rules. There's pretty much he stands out in pretty much everything he's in. I don't know if I've ever thought I don't think he ever phones it in, and this is no exception. He kind of plays the head of the Stargazer project, the director, and is sort of there's a variety of rivalries and conflicts between characters in this movie. There's obviously Stargazer project versus the Predator. There's the Predator versus the group of soldiers they've got here. I refuse to call them the loonies. I think that sounds really bad.
The unit, McKenna's unit. Is that better?
McKenna's unit that he kind of, yeah, McKenna's unit. I watched a movie called that once. But the kind of group of soldiers that McKenna ends up with, they kind of end up at odds with everybody, with both the Stargazer project and the Predators. And so initially, Sterling K. Brown is working against our lead character, Quinn McKenna, but ultimately at the end, they kind of have to come together when an even bigger threat appears. Ultimately, there's, like I said, there's a lot of turns in this movie. There's a lot of plot developments, a lot of shifts, and like I said, the conflicts kind of adjust accordingly throughout it. But Sterling K. Brown is just great. Like I said, everything he's in that I've seen, I've liked him in. This is no exception. You're not given a whole lot of background on his character, but he makes the most of every scene that he's in. One of the weird ticks they give the character is that throughout most of the movie, he's chomping on Nicorette gum. So I guess he's trying to quit smoking, I guess. Like, it's literally in the first scene. He's got like the whole pack of it that he's just like shoveling into his mouth. And I'm like, is that how that works? I've never smoked. I've never tried to quit smoking. I don't know how the gum works, but yeah, he goes hard on it.
Maybe we should try that gum. Just skip over smoking and just get addicted.
We start smoking just to literally give it up and learn how the gum works. Perfect. But yeah, so he gets the really good lines. He interacts with most of our lead characters. Like I said, he's charismatic. He knows the assignment. He's got plenty of scenes where he's engaging with the various different threats. And he's throughout this whole movie. He's fantastic. He's Sterling K. Brown.
I agree with everything you're saying about Sterling K. Brown. This man is a star. He is. I think a star is still rising. I think he's going to be the lead of some great movies coming forward. I want to see him in more and more stuff because he is just always stellar. I mostly know him from the TV show This Is Us, which ended recently, but it's one of the best drama television shows I've ever seen. I highly recommend it. It's all streaming. Go check it out. But that show has such a deep cast and great characters, and they all shine, but he's the Mark Strong Award winner of that show. He's the standout, in my opinion. And he shows his range. He can be funny. He can be serious. He can be intimidating. He can, dare I say, Andrew, he can be sexy. He's a good looking, suave man. So he can do it all. I mean, this dude could lead a great rom-com or a serious drama, or here he plays a bad guy, which is a bit weird to see. Like he cusses, he uses bad words, which is strange.
So weird,
in my brain for things I know him from. He has an important part in the first Black Panther movie, Ultimately, screen time wise, it's a small part. He plays Killmonger's dad that gets killed, which is a real shame because it's one of those parts that it's small, but it's big enough they probably won't recast him as another character in the MCU as a bigger role, which I would have liked to see him return to something more prominent. But he nails the scene that he's in there, and it's awesome that I get to be in such a historic movie. So yeah, can't say enough good things about Sterling K. Brown. I love the guy. I want to see him in more stuff. It was a treat for him to show up here. All that being said, that's not who I'm giving my Mark Strong award to. But as you said, this is a pretty good cast. It's pretty deep. It's got some variety. It's got some surprises in it. But my Mark Strong award has to go to Trevante Rhodes as Nebraska Williams, who's kind of the number 2 in the unit. Obviously, McKenna's the lead of the movie, but he becomes like his right-hand man. And this is I know this is going to sound like a backwards compliment, but bear with me a minute. A lot of members of this unit and the soldiers are really defined by like one or two quirks or character pieces. And I think that's honestly what Shane Black was going for. Whether or not you think that's good writing or not, hey, that's not for me to decide. But he wanted like a unit of distinct characters, different quirks that come together, kind of a motley crew bunch. But I think just through sheer charisma and ability, Trevante exceeds that. In true spirit of the Mark Strong Award, he elevates the role that he was given. And again, might be a backwards compliment, I cared more about him than anyone else in the unit. I cared more about him than McKenna. Like, everything he was doing was working for me. A lot of the members of this unit have, like, a dark past. They have PTSD, and they're in group therapy. It's literally how they all meet each other. And they're trying to work through it. And a lot of them kind of cope with humor or some other obvious things. But he carries the darkness and is able to be in the moment and charismatic and have quips and be an action star. He balances it the best, I think, of anybody in that unit. And I just genuinely great. We'll get to scenes later, but spoiler alert, he dies. And I think it's the most effective death in the movie. And I gotta owe it to his performance for making me feel that way. Trevante, I gotta say, probably most known for his role in Moonlight, a highly critically acclaimed movie. Won Best Picture at the Oscars, somewhat notoriously, and how that went down. Maybe you've seen that Oscar moment. He was also in Bird Box the same year as The Predator, so a few high-profile stuff there. But again, just like I was saying about Sterling K. Brown, I think his biggest roles are still ahead of him.
I agree. It's weird to say that about Sterling K. Brown because he's like 46. But Trevante Rhodes,
sometimes people break in late, man.
They do. Ridley Scott didn't direct his first movie till he was 40. So there's hope for all of us. So 5 years to make something of yourself, Andrew. Don't mess it up. But no, I agree. Trevante Rhodes he's great. Like I said, I think it's deliberate, but his character does, I think, get a lot more to work with than some of the other characters that are a lot more one note. He develops kind of a rapport and an understanding with our main guy. They have several conversations that are kind of apart from the group. And there's definitely a kind of a kinship that they form in this kind of quick amount of time. And his ultimate demise, which is part of the kind of last ditch rescue effort to save his son from the Predator. It hits, you feel it. Maybe not as heavy as, something in, my mind immediately blanked and I can think of nothing more emotionally crushing, but,
The Lion King.
Yeah, sure. It doesn't hit like, The Lion King or,
it's no Mufasa.
It's no Mufasa, but yeah, like the limited time they've had together, they make the most of it with the screen time. And when he makes the sacrifice for this guy that he's essentially just met, it still lands. Because it could easily just be like, all right, you guys met like 6 hours ago. Why should this matter to me? But it does matter. And that speaks to his performance. And like I said, he makes all of the scenes he's got count. And I think it's a fantastic pick.
Boyd Holbrook plays the lead of this movie. We've been talking about Quinn McKenna. He's the focus of the movie. He is the first one to interact with the Predator and ultimately the one to bring down the super Predator that we see. Again, just like we were saying about the other actors here, a lot of high-profile roles throughout his career. Milk, another critically acclaimed movie, has a role in Gone Girl. He's the bad guy in Logan shortly before this. So no schmuck, no newbie, and he handles the task well. He's the top commando in a commando movie, right? Like, you know exactly what you should be, what's being asked of him, and he rises to the occasion.
I agree. Boyd Holbrook is great. Like I said, I saw Logan, where he plays the Donald Pierce he plays, who's usually a member of the Hellfire Club, but he's not in that, I don't think. Is he in the Hellfire Club's not in Logan, is it?
No, the only time, actually, I don't think they ever do the Hellfire Club. They do Kevin Bacon's character, which is like
That's
a leader
the
of the
Hellfire
Hellfire
Club.
Club. But they never did they say that?
I don't know if
in
they call
First
it the
Class?
Hellfire Club, but either way, Donald
it's
Pierce.
very. I mean, Fox would never mess with X-Men lore, right? They usually kind of sticklers to how things went down. Hashtag PP. Let's get back on track. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, but he's great in that. Plays essentially the villain though. But he's great here. Like I said, he knows what the task is. He's up to it. And yeah, I anytime I see him on screen, he's usually bringing his best. Also got himself a role in the new Indiana Jones coming. So we'll see if he might be scrapping with Harrison Ford soon enough.
Jacob Tremblay plays Rory McKenna, his son. And this is a very good young actor. Probably been in stuff you've seen before, besides The Predator. He was in Wonder shortly before this. I did not see that movie, but it was clear from the trailers that a lot is being asked of him from his performance. By all accounts, I think he rose to the occasion. But was also in the comedy Good Boys, one of the main lead characters of that. And all of those kids in that movie just absolutely crushed it. Jacob is no exception. And in Dr. Sleep, a movie I have not watched yet, but I know you love, Andrew. I can only assume that Jacob was also awesome in Dr. Sleep.
He's got one scene, and it might be the scene that I remember most out of the entire movie. You'll find out why.
Oh.
It's not a good reason. Let me rephrase that. It's not a good story reason. It's a good performance reason.
Okay, got it. I got homework to do.
I was like, that sounds like it's bad. Dr. Sleep is great, though. Like I said, it's a small role, but it genuinely, like, it's stuck in my brain. And now that you've brought it back, once we're done here, I'm gonna go sit on the couch and stare at the wall for a while.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, he was also, I think, the lead voice in the Pixar film Luca. That just
and he's going to be a
year.
voice in the upcoming Little Mermaid, so kid can do it all.
And so he's going to be Flounder. That's the role. No, Sebastian's the role in Little Mermaid. Sorry, folks. I got your hopes up. You want to be the crab. You don't want to be Flounder.
You don't want to be Flounder?
I mean, Flounder's fine, but Sebastian sings Under the Sea, and that's the jam in that movie too. So
sure.
You know I'm right, Chris. Don't act like I'm crazy talking about Little Mermaid here.
I mean, if we're looking at all parts, I think Ursula is the meatiest part.
Oh, that's true. But,
I don't, Jacob obviously isn't kind of in that wheelhouse. So,
but the question is, who is playing Ursula in that movie? And now I have to look. I
think that movie's been in production for 17 years.
It's Melissa McCarthy. So,
oh, perfect. That's great.
Yeah. Who is Sebastian?
That seems that seems like the most obvious pick. I didn't think of it, but like you're telling me that, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I see that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But Jacob in this movie also does a good job. His character son, he has autism. It plays into the plot of the movie, and you have to see him get bullied a bit, pretty mercifully, and he has certain mannerisms that come along with that, and it's all believable. And from a performance standpoint, I think he handles it all extremely well. What am I trying to say? A child performance that isn't great always stands out, and that's not the case here. I think he nails what's being asked of him.
I agree. He's kind of our. Not necessarily say he's like an insert or anything like that, but basically he gets inadvertently kind of caught up in the plot when his dad, Quinn, takes some Predator equipment from the crash at the beginning of the film and basically sends it to his house. Or he sends it to a P.O. box, and I guess he's not paying for the P.O. box, so they bring it all to his forwarding address, the house. And he's actually able to, like I said, he's actually able to interact with the gear and kind of understand what it is. But yeah, he's up to the task. Yeah, he gets plenty of screen time throughout this whole movie, and he never feels out of place. which, like you said, when there's a bad kid performance. And I feel it's a little unfair because there are these kid performances that kind of go unnoticed a lot of the times. Like you said, you only really notice if it's bad. And then you obviously get people to realize when it's really good. But I think there's a lot of great performances that, because they don't distract, people don't always realize it. But in this case, he's really up to the task, and I think he does a good job.
Olivia Munn plays Casey Brackett, a scientist that is trying to study the predator aliens. Olivia Munn, alum of this very show. She was Psylocke in X-Men Apocalypse, and I think she did an awesome job there. She does a great job here as well. Most people probably first saw her way back on Attack of the Show on G4, if you followed that channel. But she's had a lot of success since then, a lot of parts in very high-profile movies. I always enjoy seeing Olivia. She does a great job. No exception here. Really, there's two female characters in this movie, her being the lead one by a large margin, which means she's doing a lot of heavy lifting and she rises to the occasion. She does a great job.
I agree. She ends up getting in the thick of the action. She gets a chance to kind of be a part of all the big final fights with the Predator, and gets to stand on her own. And that's always cool to see. These movies, especially in yesteryear, had no problem making the women either, fodder or kind of let's find somewhere to put them before the big finale so all of our dudes can flex. And either way, she gets to stand right next to everybody in these big final fights, and I think she does a great job of it. Similar to X-Men, where she got to kind of be in the thick of it, got to be in all the big action stuff. And like you said, people know Olivia Munn. I mean, Attack of the Show, I remember for her brief stint as well on The Daily Show. And she's up to the task here. So completely agree.
Andrew, this is a movie that I didn't know too much about going into it. I had seen a trailer or two. I knew about the reception, but I didn't read up on it. I didn't look into the cast. And I was quite taken aback to see Keegan-Michael Key come onto the scene here and stay the rest of the movie. It's not a small part. It's not a cameo. He's part of that main unit of soldiers. And he plays the character Coil, which is very clearly the comedic relief of the group. He's always making quips and making jokes. That's sort of his coping mechanism, if you will.
Yep.
And Keegan-Michael Key making jokes. Yeah, he knows what he's doing. I mean, he nails it. He's doing exactly what's being asked of him. Good stuff. Always like seeing him. Andrew, most people I'm sure know Keegan-Michael Key, of course, from Key and Peele, the movie they made, Keanu. And I actually know him from the show called Brain Games, which is on National Geographic, but I watched it on Disney Plus. He's the host of it. But anyway, I was surprised to learn, researching for this very podcast, that he was a cast member on a Mad TV from 2004 to 2009. Did you know that?
Yes, I did, Chris, because you know who else was a cast member on Mad TV from 2004 to 2009? Jordan Peele.
I did not know this. I mean, I watched Mad TV a good amount in the 90s, late 90s. Maybe I was done watching it by 2004 and I just never saw that, but I was 5 years. That's a long tenure. I was very surprised. I did not know those gentlemen were on that show.
My mistake. Jordan Peele was on it from 2003 to 2008. But no, like their partnership on Mad TV is what essentially leads to Key and Peele. That's kind of the first glimpse of them. So cool. Yeah, that's yeah, and through his biological father, Keegan-Michael Key was also Dwayne McDuffie's half brother. Dwayne McDuffie being a rather prominent comic book creator responsible for a lot of the Milestone characters created in the 90s.
Huh.
What a life.
Look at that. Thomas Jane is also a member of that unit as the character Baxley. And Thomas Jane's character and Coyle, Keegan-Michael Key's character, definitely have a rivalry and friendship throughout the movie. I think it's one of the stronger elements of that team, stronger relationships. Early on, we're introduced to him. Coyle is constantly insulting Baxley's character, Thomas Jane's character, Baxley, trying to get a rise out of him. But it kind of evolves throughout the course of the movie to, again, be like a mutual respect thing. And their final scene together, I think, is pretty good, pretty effective. But Thomas Jane I love, another alum of the show, a Mark Strong Award winner for his turn as Frank Castle, the Punisher. I love everything Thomas Jane is in, honestly. If we were to cover every one of his movies, I think he'd be getting the Mark Strong Award a lot. Even when the movie's not great, and I know it's another one that goes backwards compliments, but even when the movie's not great, he's always a standout. Whether it's Deep Blue Sea, The Mist. Granted, I like these movies, but I think he is just, I always enjoy seeing Thomas Jane.
I agree. I think he's great. Did you know that Thomas Jane is only 2 years older than Keegan-Michael Key? Like, watching this movie, I would have assumed it was a decade.
Well, yeah, this movie... Yeah, I do know that Keegan-Michael Key is like 50 or 51. I actually looked it up recently because of that show Brain Games. I was like, yeah, how old is this guy? He's been around a minute. And I was surprised to learn that. But yeah, Thomas Jane definitely has that like grizzled, older gentleman look down. So it is a bit surprising.
He's got that Arn Anderson Stone Cold, he's looked 45 since the age of 23 thing.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So yeah,
did you know that he writes comic books?
Yes, I do.
I had no idea. I know, like, when we were doing The Punisher, that he kind of seemed like he wasn't the biggest comic book fan and kind of had to be coaxed into that role. But maybe he's just not into superheroes and he likes a different type of story. But he has his own company that publishes comics and he's a writer among them.
And maybe the experience of The Punisher was something that endeared him to the genre. Who knows? But yeah. Yeah, here he's playing the kind of, I mean, he's literally the grizzled vet of this group. And yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's Thomas Jane.
Alfie Allen plays the character Lynch. Now, here's a fun fact about Alfie Allen. His sister is the pop singer Lily Allen, which, here's the thing. I think the people that know who Alfie Allen is and the people that know who Lily Allen is, the Venn diagram is just two circles. So I'm not sure if that's blowing anybody's mind. But personally, I am a fan of Lily Allen's music. And listening to it and kind of reading up on her, I read that. Oh, her brother is a famous actor called Alfie Allen. And she actually has a song called Alfie that's about him, which is kind of funny because it's all about how he's like a burnout pothead. But he's got this thriving career. But he's probably most known for Game of Thrones, which... everyone listening to this probably knows that I still have not watched. So I was like, oh, I guess that's kind of cool, even though I have no idea who this guy is. And again, I would expect a lot of Game of Thrones fans, people that know who Alfie Allen is, maybe don't know who UK singer Lily Allen is. But if you're out there and you know who both of them are, did not know that they were related, now you know. Brother and sister.
What other people may know Alfie Allen for is being John Wick's primary target in the first John Wick film as well.
Oh, right,
he's the guy who kills his dog. So Alfie Allen is the worst.
Spoilers for the first.
If you don't know, that's what John Wick's about. Come on, at this point, you know that by accident. Also, not just Lily Allen's sister; he's Sam Smith's cousin, which I did not know either. That's Sam Smith being another famous English singer.
I say I know he's a singer, and I'm sure I've heard his songs, but I can't.
He did. I mean, what you may know him for is
guy.
No, he's the Lay Me Down guy. Although he might be the Take Me to Church guy.
How could I
Stay With Me? But what you may know him for is he does the theme song to Spectre, the film Spectre, cool. Writing on the Wall. But yeah. So anyway. Touching back on Alfie Allen, so he's the worst person alive for all of his roles. He's killed John Wick's dog, and
got it.
And I don't know who his character in Game of Thrones is, but
probably bad. Everybody in that
he's probably bad.
Bad people.
Yeah, he is. Either way, but no. For John Wick alone, no. But anyway, here he's got. It's pretty minor. There's not a whole lot of dialogue or screen time for the character, but he's up to the task.
Augusto Aguilera plays Nettles, rounding out this team of commandos here. Interesting character. His quirk, his defining characteristic is that he's super devout and religious. So there's a few like Bible references throughout. And then his other thing is he is constantly hitting on Olivia Munn's character. That's what defines his character. So maybe the short end of stick as far as things that define your character but
Yep.
he does what you can do with it. I think he's supposed to be
Right.
like a lovable loser type kind of guy. Like he kind of gets crapped on a lot, but then has one of the dramatic deaths that's supposed to be like, oh, you know what? Maybe we were too harsh on that guy.
Maybe Nettles deserved a second look. Yeah, this is, like I said, it's another role where there's not a whole lot to dig into. He's kind of the pilot of the group. He's the one that is the former pilot of the group, and he's the one that handles that for them in the future. But yeah, he makes the most of what he's got. There's not a whole lot there, but he's making the most of every second.
Now, Yvonne Strahovski plays Emily. Emily Quinn is what the Wikipedia page said, and I just did some quick Googling. That is an error, people. That is an error on Wikipedia. Because Emily Quinn doesn't make any sense because her husband, her ex-husband, is Quinn McKenna. So her last name's not going to be his first name. That would be some goofy writing. So she is actually Emily McKenna. But the Wikipedia said Emily Quinn. Ladies and gentlemen, I have logged in. I actually created a Wikipedia account. I don't know if it's necessary or not. I created a Wikipedia account. I logged in. And I updated this page. I made a correction on this page. Best of the rest. Improving lives everywhere. Making Wikipedia pages more accurate. Hashtag positivity podcast. So she plays Emily McKenna. You go to Wikipedia, you'll see that. That is, as I said, Quinn's estranged wife, ex-wife. They still have some kind of relationship because of course they have a child together, Rory. And she is not in too much of the movie. We see her with a few scenes with Rory early on. And then there's a scene where the unit ends up at the house and she sort of shows that she's capable on her own and able to handle weapons. And she gives a speech about her husband and has some key scenes there. But not a huge role, but I think she does a good job. She's believable as a soldier's wife and a woman who knows her stuff and can probably kick butt herself. Which makes sense because she played Sarah Walker on Chuck for a number of years, which is an excellent television show. It's one of the shows that I did not watch while it was airing. I saw ads for it a lot, never checked it out. And then whenever I first met friend of the show, my wife, who at the time was friend of the show, my girlfriend, she's like, oh, I love the show. We got to watch it together. We watched the whole series, and I got to say, it's awesome. Good stuff.
It's pretty good.
It's fun. She also has a prominent role on The Handmaid's Tale. She voices Miranda Lawson in the Mass Effect series. Some of the most popular video games that I've never played, but I hear they are very good.
No slouch.
No slouch. No slouch. She's good. She's also, I noticed that she was in the movie I, Frankenstein. Possibly a future episode. I've never seen it, but I know it's like a reimagining the Frankenstein tale. But she has a line about Frankenstein in this movie. A line that I actually wrote down because I think it's a little bit strange, and I'm wondering if the line was given because of her connection to the franchise, to the character of Frankenstein. But she is talking about a Halloween costume for her son, and she's like, I got you a Frankenstein mask. And he kind of just looks at her. And she says, you know, Frankenstein threw a little girl in water to see if she would float. And that is a specific reference to the original, either the original story, the original movie adaptation, but it feels like such a dated reference. If a child knows Frankenstein, I don't think that's why they know Frankenstein. I think
Right.
If I was trying to be like, oh, you know Frankenstein, I wouldn't jump to like the darkest part of his original telling. I would be like, you know, green monster that's sewn together or something like that. Or, you know, from Hotel Transylvania. I thought it was so weird to reference such a specific thing from a
It's a very
1930s film or older book.
right. That's a very odd reference to make to a child, but who knows?
But she does a good job. I think we don't get to see her much as a wife because I mentioned they are estranged, but we see her as a mother, and she does a good job with the chemistry with her son.
I agree. She does a really good job here. Like I said, not a lot of screen time. Is willing to get in on the action. Ultimately, does not. But at one point, literally grabs a gun off the wall and is ready to go hunt
Yeah,
down
when the
whoever
soldiers
necessary to get a child
themselves
back.
are chickening out hunting the predator, she is ready to go.
She is, and yeah, let's say not a whole lot of screen time there, but she's awesome. You've almost assuredly She's shown up in a lot of places. You wouldn't be shocked if you've seen her in something.
That rounds out our main players, but I gotta shout out one more casting here. Jake Busey plays the character Sean Keyes, and they don't draw a lot of attention to this, but his character is the son of Peter Keyes, played by his dad, Gary Busey, in Predator 2. How fun is that, Andrew?
That is pretty fun. I saw that when I didn't watching it. I didn't even catch that. I was just like,
no,
okay,
I didn't
whatever.
I didn't click.
And then like looking later, I was like, oh wow. And yeah, it's a bit part. Literally, I think he's in the lab scenes, and then does he die? I don't remember.
He looks like he's dying. He has a wound, and he's like, you have to go kill it. And I think it's the last time we see him.
Okay, so yeah, he's not in a lot of the movie, but yeah, fun little cameo.
That was me talking. That wasn't audio from the movie of Jake Busey saying you have to go kill it. That was just a spot on impression of him, in case you're wondering.
Just a genius impression, Chris. I thought you were gone and Jake Busey was just using you as his Zoom screen.
Not many people can do a Jake Busey impression. I think I'm
included.
In class
No.
yeah. All right, let's jump into this movie. Let's talk about the scenes of the film, starting with the best scene. Andrew, in your opinion, when is this movie firing on all cylinders? What is your favorite scene in The Predator?
I'm going to go with the kind of final stages of the fight against the kind of what's the term they use for it? The
Predator, right? The name of the movie, is that what it's referring to? The Predator?
There are a variety of predators that appear in this film, but at one point a much larger predator appears, and I can't remember if there's a specific name they call it or not.
Predator Prime.
Predator
Super
Prime,
Predator.
Sure. That's we're going to call him Predator Prime or Super Predator. That sounds
well. Prime
Super
sounds
Predator
backwards because Prime is like the original, right? So Prime is
the Alpha.
They can
Predator.
also mean like there you go, Alpha Predator.
The Alpha Predator, sure. What I feel like they call him something in the movie, but
Big
I
Predator,
feel like
big guy.
Is that it? Is Big Predator?
I don't know. Sure.
Anyway, the Alpha Prime Predator.
The big Alpha Prime Elite Predator.
The big Alpha Prime Super Predator. So he kills basically the predator that's kind of on Earth this whole time. Basically, they have a fight where this dude shows up and he's built like a brick. You know what it is. And he just mauls this dude. Like it's not even a fair fight. He just straight up like crushes this dude's head in. But it turns out that this guy was a bit of a renegade from the Predators. But he takes McKenna's son, Rory. That's ultimately what happens here, and he tries to take off in the ship and take him back because it turns out the Predators are basically either expecting us to die out because we won't take care of the planet or plan to attack us when we're most vulnerable in our process of destroying the planet.
Right.
Either way, they're trying to get all these key pieces of things to kind of turn themselves into hybrids using the best qualities of all the different species they encounter, create these hybrids. And this results in a kind of final chase / fight between the Alpha Prime Predator and the rest of our scrappy heroes that are left. So this involves them kind of jumping onto the ship. You get some interesting stuff here with the force field where they're on the ship and he activates the force field and Quinn kind of ducks under it. Nebraska kind of ends up on top of it. And then our boy Nettles unfortunately gets sliced in half by it. Very unfortunate, but a cool effect though. I thought that was a cool way to kind of illustrate that. And then ultimately this is where Nebraska makes his big sacrifice to bring the ship down so that Quinn can engage the Predator. And this crashes down. We get the Super Alpha Prime Super Predator versus kind of our remaining group, which is just Quinn, Rory, and Casey at this point. She kind of re-engages into the fight, and we get some really cool sequences here where they use the Predator technology against the Super Prime Alpha Predator and are able to eventually take him down and defeat him. But I think this is a really cool sequence. It's kind of what the whole film... you can't even say the whole film's been building toward it now that I realize it, because you don't even realize the super Alpha Prime Predator is a thing until pretty much
Right.
we're into the third act already. And but yeah, it's a cool action sequence. You got some really cool visuals. You get some neat technologies that they're all interacting with, and I thought it was really cool. And if it's how you're gonna blow the movie off, I think it does a good job with that.
I agree. That's basically my pick as well for favorite scene. I can highlight a few of the things in that climax, but yeah, it's the big fight with the big new Alpha Prime large elite predator, as you said. And I gotta say, the one thing I did know about this movie is that there was a large predator, a new predator type, because whether or not they showed this or not, it was spoiled in the trailers and the marketing. I remember like when the first posters for this movie was a predator's hand holding a predator's severed head. And it's actually kind of funny because a lot of people were like, that's a very small predator head. But what they were trying to show was that this is a large predator holding a normal sized predator head. Not confusing at all. But that's the one thing I know about the movie. I know they kind of, again, spoil it in the trailer, which I think it would have been a nice surprise because I think this large super elite predator's intro is done very well. They're hiding inside a school and you just see this shadow of this giant predator and its footsteps. And it's like, man, predators themselves are terrifying when they're stalking you, but like one that's like, I don't know, 18 feet tall, however tall that guy is terrifying. And the way it breaks through the wall and crushes the normal predator, it then punches his face off, essentially. Like, it's at the time it's introduced, it's not trying to attack humans, but you know it's coming. And we won't stand a chance once he decides he wants to kill us. It is such a cool introduction. Pretty cool concept. You know, these Predator movies, we said it on Predator 2, but Predators, this one, each one of them kind of continues to build on their Predator mythos. It acknowledges what came before, but it's never exactly repeating the exact same thing. They're always trying to introduce new elements. And I think a Predator, it's even bigger than the other Predators because it's, you know, combining DNA
it's a
from
hybrid
species. That's a cool way to go. Cool way to take it. I like that. But going back to that final scene, the big climax, I like it. What I like a lot about this last scene is actually the character deaths, which is a little morbid, I know, but we know it's coming. These characters can get picked off one by one. That's kind of the MO of these movies. So like I said, on the ship itself, the force field cuts Nettles in half, and it's sad. It's the moment we realize, oh, we were kind of mean to that guy. And then trapped inside the force field is McKenna, and outside of it is Nebraska. And they have this moment with each other, and Nebraska looks back at the engine because the ship's about to take off and leave Earth. And you know what's coming, right? You know what's going to happen, and he throws himself into the engine to sacrifice himself. And it's effective. It works. This movie, I don't know, it ain't perfect. I mean, I don't want to dance around it. We've talked about it, but like for that to still shine through and still work when other things aren't working is a huge feat. Why he's getting my Mark Strong Award, or one reason anyway, and I like that scene. I also like the deaths of Baxley and Coyle, Thomas Jane, and Keegan-Michael Key's character specifically, because, like I said, they're kind of butting heads up the movie, but you kind of realize throughout that it's kind of like a friendly hazing back and forth with one another. And at the end, it's the two of them alone, like in the jungle, and they realize they're being stalked by the predator, and Coyle just starts shooting up in the air, and he's like, what are you doing? Braxley asks him, and he's like, you know, you can live. I'm going to sacrifice myself. I'm going to distract the predator. But they end up both meeting their demise, and the way it ends up is that Thomas Jane's character is impaled onto a tree like 30 feet in the air, and Keegan-Michael Key's character is on the ground bleeding out, and the predator has moved on to its next target, and they're left there to slowly die. But they lock eyes with each other. They each give the other one like a knowing nod, and at the same time, they shoot each other to put the other one out of their misery. It's nice. It's a bit morbid and tragic, but it's a good, you know, it really feeds into the story they've been telling, the arc that these two characters have throughout the movie, and I like that. It's a good death, I say.
I agree. I think it's an interesting way to cap that off because it kind of, you know, they're both done for. There's no coming back from what they've done. You know, Thomas Jane's like impaled on a tree, and like you said, Keegan-Michael Key is literally holding his own guts. They're not coming back from this. So rather than allow themselves further suffering, they choose to, in a weird, not weird, but in a show of an unusual show of respect, decide to mercifully put the other down. And
because they could each shoot themselves, but like by shooting each other, they are doing the other one a favor, like in their last action.
You could have very much chosen to just have them do that, but by doing it they show that despite the appearances and despite the dialogue and despite this, that there is a kinship here, there is a respect here, and that's just a good little ripple to add to these characters. Because as we've established, a lot of these characters don't get a lot of chance to have depth added. They're all making the most of the screen time they got with the dialogue they have, but you don't dive in to the background of these characters, and there's a lot of them. It would be difficult, even with a script that was focused on who all of these guys are. So by adding things like this, little ripples, like this, like you said, the death of Nebraska, things like that, you add layers to the characters efficiently, alongside the kind of action, the breakneck action that you're also telling at the same time. And that's just that's a good use of the storytelling.
You know what else I appreciate about this final fight? At no point does McKenna cover himself in mud, which we've seen multiple times in the franchise up to this point. In fact, there's no scene where he tries to hide his body heat at all, which we've seen in every Predator movie, I think, leading up to this one. So I liked that. I mean, it wouldn't be like horrible if they did do that. It's obviously an effective way to fight a predator, but the movie kind of makes a point to show us new ways to fight a predator. And in this case, it's mostly using their weapons against them, which we saw a bit of in Predator 2, but this takes it to the next level where he's actually wearing some of their armor, using their cloaking device, and actually uses the Super Predator's own severed arm against him for the final kill, which, again, just bringing new stuff to the franchise. Always got to appreciate that.
Yeah, it's this movie actually kind of in general downplays the heat vision aspect of things. Like, it's not really a driving focus here. Like, it kind of, like you said, in Predator, he covers himself with the mud. In Predator 2, they get the biosuits and they try to kind of hang out in the cold storage to kind of further throw it off. I'm pretty sure in Predators, Adrian Brody just recreates the mud-covered thing in a moment there. And it's interesting to kind of see it here, not even really the focus. And in a way, I think that's fine. Like I said, you've kind of really you've made that the focus of several previous things. With this one, it really is just this dude could destroy you no matter what. So it's, and also we're in we get an interesting kind of shift of environment again throughout this movie. Because in Predator, they're very much in the jungle, and you get some scenes in the jungle here, including kind of our climax. But you also get some scenes that are in like a residential neighborhood, like in schools and stuff. Suburbia. That create suburbia. You get another interesting ripple of like, what does a predator fight in that environment look like? And in that situation, like in a school, there's no way to hide your body heat in school. There's no way to do that. So they don't really focus on it. I think that's fine. But it's interesting little ripples to add to everything.
Andrew, there's a scene in this movie where McKenna mails the Predator's helmet and gauntlet back to his home for safekeeping. Like you said, it's supposed to go to his P.O. box. It ends up at his house. His son opens it. His mom assumes that his son thinks it is video games, and he kind of figures out this alien technology. But that unboxing scene, when Rory cuts open the box and pulls out this giant Predator helmet, there was a moment where I was like, man, I would love to have that. What a cool prop. I would love that one day in my life to get some mail and open it up and it's a freaking Predator helmet. Did you have that moment, Andrew, when he was holding that helmet? Like, I want that prop.
That would be pretty rad. One of those, definitely a dope looking prop that would be, I mean, I'd put that on the wall. I'm not even a prop guy. I'd put that on the wall.
Andrew, what's the cooler design, the Predator helmet or the Predator face, the mandibles and stuff? What's more iconic, and what do you think is cooler?
I think the helmet is more iconic, just because it gets featured more often. Just because and for the whole first movie, you never see beyond the helmet. But that Predator face
until the very end.
Till the very end. That's what I mean. Like
right.
the face itself wasn't the focus of anything. I think. But yeah, I think that Predator face design, especially like when they were doing it practically in the 80s, is it's gnarly as hell. You can't deny that.
Yeah.
It's genuinely. Is that Stan Winston? I think that's Stan Winston, and he crushed that one. That look is so unique. That whole appearance, that whole thing, and yeah, that's almost a push. Where like, I think in general the helmet is more iconic, but I think the face itself is the more impressive of the two for sure.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. There's a moment where the Predator, when he's in the lab and like waking up, actually bites somebody like with his mandibles. And I don't know if we've seen that before. I haven't seen the Alien vs. Predator movies, but I think it's the first time we actually get to see him use those big old mandible claws, which was pretty cool. Also, and I'm not totally sure about this, but is this the first time we see a Predator's feet? Because whenever he's laid out on that table naked, I saw those feet and I was like, those are kind of weird looking. I don't think that's what I expected the Predator's foot to look like.
It's very funny because when he's laying on the table and like even when he gets up and he's fighting, like there's this mindset I have of like, man, he doesn't look that imposing. Like a Predator without all of his armor and stuff just looks kind of like a weird alien dude. And then just like he turns around and puts all of his armor on and suddenly it's like this hard switch and I was like, oh, yep, now I'm scared of the guy again.
There it is. Yep. Yeah. I agree. We get some, that first movie really builds up the mystery of the Predator. You don't ever get clear shots of it basically until the very end. Predator 2, you see more of the Predator, but they still kind of build up the mystique early on before finally showing you. But I think by this point, by the time they're making the Predator, like, everybody knows the design. Everybody knows what they look like. They're not really interested in trying to hide it anymore. So we get to see a lot of things that we've maybe never seen before. And I gotta applaud the movie for still doing a lot of practical effects. We still have a guy in a suit for the original Predator, kind of enhanced with some CG, of course. But
of course,
I think it looks very good. And the Super Mega Alpha Evolution Hybrid Predator, as it's called,
officially,
it definitely is CG a lot of times because it's so massive that you don't have somebody that can fit in that suit. But I think there's also practical shots of it too, especially during that final fight where he's not like alongside a human. I think it is a guy in a suit. If not, it's insanely good CG. But I think they still do a hybrid for the larger Predator, which, again, just kudos. I'm not anti-CG guy, but I do like using the right method for the right shot, and I think they nail it here.
I agree. I think they use the right combination. It's the plot of the Predators kind of making themselves into hybrids is really interesting because to me, it's an interesting riff on the whole concept of the xenomorphs from Alien, because the whole idea that when a xenomorph takes the traits of who it gestates inside of, essentially. So this is how you get things like the kind of alien that are more like dogs in some of the later sequels, and in a later movie that we may or may not be discussing, the idea of a potential alien predator hybrid. So to kind of, and so to see them kind of take on the kind of scientific version of that with the Predators, of we're literally taking the best parts of everything we find and trying to kind of hybrid ourselves with it, versus with the aliens where it's a more raw biological of we're just picking up traits of the things that we use to birth our new aliens. It creates, again, an interesting dichotomy between the two that, again, you got to wonder if we might be talking about in the future.
You know what's interesting about them, collecting DNA, that whole subplot, the hybrid stuff, is that they specifically mention that they're getting the DNA from spinal fluid, because they make it a point, they've taken skulls and spines as trophies, which we have seen in previous movies. Now, obviously, during those previous movies, they didn't have the lore that would come later about this hybrid stuff. So it's very smart of Shane Black, or whichever writer's idea it was, to use something we've seen before and give it a story purpose retroactively. Because you see it in those earlier movies, you assume it's just a brutal kill that's cool, or it's a trophy, the skull, and we know the skull's a trophy, but the spine's a trophy. And here, they give it a story purpose. It's a smart way to kind of strengthen that link to the previous movies, even if it wasn't planned in those earlier movies.
Yeah, it's one of those riffs on like a retcon, as it is in comics, that doesn't really obstruct anything, and it doesn't really narratively create any complications. It just creates an interesting little ripple. But like you said, it's a good kind of retcon where we're getting something that deepens the lore out of it versus something that just kind of confuses the lore. But yeah, it's a yeah, I like that aspect of the characters. I just thought that was an interesting notion of the Predators kind of trying to upgrade themselves and turning their kind of hunts into part of that, because that makes it a little bit more than just kind of like big game hunting, as it's called, or kind of bass fishing, I think they call it in this. The idea that they're just coming and like hunting us for fun. This kind of adds a different ripple to it. Of it's almost a scouting of like, let's see what humanity has to offer, see if there's anything that we want to take from humanity before we essentially potentially conquer this planet. So yeah, some good stuff to the lore there.
Andrew, we had a question in the week not too long ago about fan service. How would we define it? What's good fan service? What's bad fan service? And I was reminded of that question a couple times watching this movie. Such as the line that I used in the intro of the episode whenever Brackett, who loves biology and aliens, gets to see the Predator for the first time, looks at his face and says, "You are a beautiful mother effer," which is a riff. Obviously a callback to the very first movie where Arnold says the opposite, that he is an ugly mother effer. A famous line from that movie. Andrew, look, hashtag PP and all, but what do you think of callbacks like this? Like an iconic franchise, it's almost like every sequel has to reference those movies. Every Terminator references I'm back, right? It's a requirement. You have to do that. Do you think it's fun? Does it detract from the movie? Are you neutral on it? What do you think about lines like that? Specifically, I should say, when they subvert them like this instead of just repeating it.
Doesn't really bother me, really. It's not something that I have any hard feelings about. Usually for me, it's when it just kind of like, yeah, this one feels kind of forced. Like, you know what it is. Like, you know what the joke is. Like, it's just riffing on that. But it doesn't really detract or anything. Like the Arnold ones always, the Terminator ones could get a little tiresome at times, because it was like, I get it. T2 was great. Like it feels like there's a lot of Terminator sequels that are just trying to remind me that Terminator 2 was awesome. And I'm like, you don't need to remind me. I know Terminator 2 is awesome. But yeah, in general, I just don't have hard feelings. Like fan service for me, like I'm trying to think if there's an instance where like I did genuinely kind of like groan at it, where it was kind of like, all right, come on.
Well, there's another instance in this very movie, Andrew, where they subvert a famous line. Nebraska says when they're trying to escape the facility, "Get to the chopper," and they all get on motorcycles.
That's right. Yes.
That's kind of fun.
That was a little fun. That was fun. Because I heard that too. Like they pan over and they show a bunch of motorcycles, and he's like, "Get to the choppers," and I'm like, "Those are motorcycles." And then and I was like, "Oh,
we've all seen Pulp Fiction."
Yes, I understand. Chris, you know me. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But
we're good friends.
We are. We have a show together. We would hang out all the time if we lived in the same city. But yeah, otherwise I don't have hard feelings on like just throwaway lines like that. It doesn't bother me.
Andrew, look, hashtag PP, hashtag positive podcast. I want to acknowledge something. We always focus on the positives, being you know the premise of our show, but there's a thing in this movie that I want to address. I just feel like we should, and it's that this movie features prominently an autistic character that feeds into the plot of the story in a specific way, and I feel comfortable bringing this up because I don't think this movie is making a mistake per se by doing this, but this character possibly has savant syndrome. It's clear that they are able to understand things that most humans would not, like the alien language. They're able to have a photographic memory and reproduce a map because of that. And these are all things somewhat based in reality. However, in no way does that describe every single person with autism. But the thing is, there's a bit of an issue with Hollywood and screenwriters and TV writers where they are only using autistic characters whenever they need that specific ability built into the plot. And it reminds me a bit of like the Bechdel test. Like if a movie doesn't quote unquote pass the Bechdel test. It doesn't mean that movie is anti-feminism, doesn't mean that movie is bad, but when you apply it to every movie, all of Hollywood, and 90% of your movies aren't passing, that's the issue. And I feel the same way here. Like, it's not bad that this character exists in this movie, but if the only time you ever see autistic characters because it's convenient for the plot for something that isn't even possible that every single person has autism, then you kind of have an issue. And this movie did get a bit of criticism for that and some of the things that it says about autism, but I wanted to acknowledge that. Also, the fact that there is a character in this movie that has Tourette's that seemingly is only there for humorous moments where they say inappropriate things at inappropriate times, which again does not represent anybody with Tourette's. I don't think anybody thinks of Tourette's only in that term, that it's kind of funny and awkward. But you see that used a lot in Hollywood. So screenwriters, I know you're listening. Hollywood, I know you're listening. Let's do better. Let's move on. Let's get some variety in these types of characters. But I know I'm detracting from the purpose of our show, so I'm going to bring it back around with this, Andrew. There's a lot of humor in this movie. There's a lot of jokes in this movie. Maybe you don't think every one of them lands, but there's a few, more than a few, that genuinely got a chuckle out of me. There's some good jokes in this movie. I say, Andrew, you know what I have here? I had the top 5 jokes in The Predator. You ready for this?
Yep.
Let me clack my... You hear my note cards?
I do. Let me, I don't have a keyboard to be Paul Schaefer, so you're just going to have to pretend that I did some keyboard notes here.
All right. We've got a moment in the climax of this movie where Rory, the child of the movie, is being held captive by Traeger, our bad guy. And he wants Rory's ability to read the alien language to get into their ship. And he tells him, you probably can't do that, can you? To which Rory replies, that's reverse psychology. I can do that too. Don't go fuck yourself. That's a funny joke. Number 5. Number 4 joke in The Predator. Brackett's character, played by Olivia Munn, accidentally tranquilizes herself while she is on top of a bus and she's getting woozy. The unit who she has just met is going to get to the choppers, their motorcycles, for the getaway, but McKenna stays behind, and he's looking at the soldiers approaching them, and he's looking back up at her. He's like, come on, lady. And he holds out his hands to catch her, and then he looks around the corner, and she falls off and lands on the ground. And he looks back and says, I'm sorry. And then he leaves. Number 4. Number 3 joke in The Predator. Whenever we are going to the secret lab, everybody assembles in a room, and that room ends up being an elevator and begins slowly lowering, which looks like the walls are getting taller. And the man operating the station says, is it just your imagination, or is this haunted room actually stretching? Which is a nod to the Disney ride, The Haunted Mansion, which has the same effect in the very first room. Now, Andrew, had I never been on that ride, which I've been to Disneyland once and I rode the ride once and I do remember it, I would think this is a pretty dumb line and not get the reference. But knowing the reference, I think it's a solid joke, and it's followed up with another member of the lab saying, every time whenever he actually makes a joke, implying that this guy always makes the Haunted Mansion
Can't
joke.
stop himself from making a Haunted Mansion joke every time. That's
I
the
would do the same thing.
That's the actual line in Haunted Mansion. It actually says that, doesn't it?
I think so. I would assume so, but I know it's referencing the effect in the first room. But I would assume, the cast.
I feel like that's actual dialogue from it too. So that creates
good stuff.
An even deeper joke there.
That brings us up to number 2. The number 2 joke in The Predator. The unit finds themselves with ammunition again, with arms, with guns, after they've been in therapy and not allowed to have them for a long time. And Thomas Jane's character gets a handgun in his hand, and he cocks it, and he says, it's been a long time since I had a gun in my hand. Keegan-Michael Key asks, what's it feel like? Thomas Jane says, like a gun. All right. Number 1 joke in The Predator, at least in this humble podcaster's opinion. The Predator is escaping the facility. He's injured, and he hops into the back of a convoy to sneak out. Now, there's other soldiers in the back of the convoy that he has to murder, and he does, viciously. The driver hears the commotion, and he asks, hey, is everything all right back there? The Predator, what does he do to reassure this man? He grabs the severed arm of one of the soldiers, passes it to the front seat, and the severed arm is giving a thumbs up. And the driver sees that and says, all right.
Oh my God.
I like that one.
That was good.
Dumb, but it's very funny.
I got a chuckle out of that one. I can't pretend that I didn't. Oh wow. That was a thanks, Chris, for that.
Yeah, top 5 jokes in The Predator. Sorry I couldn't do 10. Maybe next time.
Maybe next time.
I do like the running bit. Speaking of jokes and humor in this movie, where they're explaining to Dr. Brackett, the scientist that studies these things, about this alien that they have called the Predator, and they explain that it's a trophy hunter, hunts for sport. And she's like, "Well, that's not a predator. A predator hunts for survival, for food. This is a trophy hunter." And Traeger doesn't miss a beat. He's like, well, we had a vote. The Predator sounds cooler, so that's what we call it, which is basically why it's called the Predator. It's absolutely right. And then it comes back up again later when Nebraska learns that it's called the Predator. He's like, well, technically that's not a predator. And she's like, thank you. I said the same thing earlier. I like that.
That was pretty
acknowledging
good.
That
was a good one. Yeah.
Andrew, we can't talk about the Predator without talking about the final scene of this movie, which is clearly teasing the future of this franchise. Now, we've talked about the reception of this movie, and we know what the next movie coming out is. It's a prequel, so it's unlikely that sequels in this timeline or that are referenced by this final scene are going to come to fruition. But that was clearly the plan at one point. The final scene that we get here is we get to see the gift that the rogue Predator was trying to give the humans. It's implied that first Predator was actually on our side, and they knew that the end was coming for humanity, and they were trying to bring us something that we thought was destroyed in the movie, but we find out it survived. Just this pod that's in a secret facility, and the scientists are opening this pod, and it's very slow and very dramatic about what's going to be inside the pod. Now, what I'm thinking is it's going to be a xenomorph. They say they kind of decode the alien message, and it's going to be a predator killer. And so I'm like, okay, maybe that Predator was giving us a xenomorph, which is kind of dangerous because you can't really control those things. But I bet they're trying to tie it into aliens. I'm expecting a xenomorph. I'm expecting a face hugger. I'm expecting an egg, something. That's not what it is, though. This sort of drone-looking thing comes out of the pod. And then it attaches to one of the scientists, and a suit forms across his entire body with the outward appearance of a predator with all of its weapons intact, and it fires, and then it comes back off of his body into the drone. Essentially, what the Predator was giving us is an Iron Man suit, but it's the Predator. And it's built up a little bit in the movie. For one, I mentioned earlier, the main way we fight Predators in this movie is with their own weapons. So it's very much driving home the idea that their own weapons are effective against them. So there's kind of some hints or clues about what's coming, but I it's not what I guessed. It's not what I thought was coming out of that pod. I was taken aback.
It's there was definitely there was a variety of different versions of this scene that apparently existed, and it all was kind of just a weird mishmash. Like one ending of this movie involved Dutch, Arnold's character from the OG, coming back, which I think marks the third time he's turned down reprising the role of this character. Yeah. He turned it down for Predator 2. I think he turned it down for one of the AVP movies as well, just because at the time I think he had just been elected governor of California. And he turned it down here just because he didn't think, like, he thought it was, a 30-second cameo. He just thought it was kind of dumb. And so there was that version of it. There was apparently two different versions that featured. One was Ellen Ripley from the Alien franchise, if you will, and the other was going to feature Newt, the character from Aliens. These may have been tie-ins to Neil Blomkamp's potential Alien sequel that he had spoken about doing, his kind of pseudo-Alien sequel that was going to ignore Alien 3 and 4. Either way, there was definitely intentions. I mean, it's a sequel set up as it is, but there was definitely some crossover intentions there as well, that ultimately they didn't end up going with, for better or worse. I can't imagine the internet reception to time traveling Ellen Ripley would have been very positive. And,
Yeah.
just I can't think of any setup for that doesn't stretch the imagination maybe a little too far. But as it is, we basically just get a suit that basically will let you fight like a predator.
It's so jarring to see at the very end of this movie, but look, hashtag Positivity Podcast. I gotta say, the idea of a sequel where we have an Iron Man type suit that makes us as powerful as a predator, fighting predators. I mean, there could be something there that sounds like, man, that sounds like, I don't want to say fan fiction, but I can see that happening in a comic book adaptation.
Yeah.
And reading that and being like, well, this is cool. And so I think there's a way to maybe make that feel cool on screen as well. I wonder if they're almost chasing like MCU style success by making a superhero out of it. It's kind of hard to see exactly where they're going to take that. Either like B-movie, fun action schlock, or again, Predator as a human superhero. I don't know. It sounds wild. And I guess the world will never see what those plans were.
We won't. The idea that you could potentially maybe flip the script, the idea that we take the hunt to them, which is, I mean, that's the final kind of setup of a lot of these movies. We finally fight them, but the idea of like a human offensive against predators, turning the predators into the prey kind of thing, I think that would be an interesting way to potentially go. I don't know if a Predator Iron Man suit is necessarily the way to go about that, but I think that could have been an interesting setup to kind of flip the script there. As it is, like I said, those plans did not come to pass. Instead, we have been gifted Dan Trachtenberg's Prey, which hopefully rules. That's genuinely one of my most anticipated movies coming up. Just because 10 Cloverfield Lane was great. Kind of was surprised that he didn't do anything else in that time, but I'm excited for it.
We'll see what the future holds for the franchise.
We shall.
Well, at this point, I've officially finally seen every Predator movie. Again, we got Prey coming up that I'm gonna watch, and we get the crossover movies I haven't seen yet, but every mainline Predator movie I've seen, and harkening back to our other question of the week there, I've seen the entire filmography of Shane Black, at least his directorial efforts. I've seen all 4, 5 of those.
I was say all four. What a great effort!
Another notch in my belt, baby.
There you go.
Speaking of question of the week, it's time for a new one. That's what we do at the end of all these episodes. So, question of the week this week, coming hot off of our Discord server. Again, you can join that Discord by following the link in the show notes here. This one comes from Zavazda, who asks, what are your top act 3s / climaxes / finales of movies? Thinking particularly of action sequences, though not limited to superhero films. All right, Zavazda.
It's a great question.
It's a good question. It's a broad question, but I like it. Favorite act 3s, climaxes, finales. Andrew, when you hear that, what's like the first movie that jumps into your mind?
I'm not even going to lie. One of the first movies I genuinely think of is Last Jedi, which may seem like an odd pick by a lot of people. But I mean, we've spoken before how you and I both genuinely love that movie. But I love like the final stretches of this movie, from the throne room fight with Rey and Kylo versus the kind of the guard of Snoke, to Laura Dern hyperdriving her ship through another spaceship, which somehow had not been done in any of these movies before and looked awesome.
So cool.
And then ultimately our fight down on the planet, which is called what again?
Crate? Croak? Creek?
Crate.
Crate? Crate, there it is.
Yeah, got the salt.
Samsonite.
It's way off. But I love the look and the design of this planet, the way they do, because the whole ground is like covered with a layer of salt, but there's this red dirt underneath it, which creates this stunning visual sense for it. All the ships that are coming, they've got this trail that they're creating in the dirt, and then ultimately, this all leads to the Luke Skywalker showdown, which I love. I think it's fantastic.
Yep.
Obviously, people have talked about it before. Luke never lands a hit. He also makes no motions with his feet, which was the key that he's not actually there.
So he slides, because you just talked about the salt planet. If you disrupt the salt, the red comes up. So you see Kylo slide his foot. You see the red, and then you see Luke take a step back, but no red dirt is exposed.
Yes, so that is your tell. Your tell that he's not actually there, but Kylo is so incensed at defeating Luke Skywalker that he doesn't even notice initially. And I'm just going to say, when he fires all of the barrage down on Luke and Luke walks out of the thing and just dusts his shoulder, that's one of the most stone cold moments in that entire franchise, and it's awesome. But this whole sequence, it creates, and then obviously this kind of culminates in the Resistance getting to fight another day, but those sequences all in a row, that throne fight to the destruction to the salt planet, all of it is just this amazing third act to me with these repeated excellent action set pieces. And it's just visually stunning. Narratively, I think it's awesome. I think it moves the franchise into an interesting place. And it's just awesome. It may be a bit of a left field pick, but that's genuinely one of the first things that comes to mind for me.
That's a great pick. I love that movie. Like you said, we've talked about it plenty. It's good. It's so good. The visual of that planet is just, I mean, the use of red throughout the movie, because it comes up in the throne fight, obviously, and on the salt planet. It's just chef's kiss, perfect, stunning, gorgeous, all those things that you said. I love, you mentioned them firing at Luke, and one of my most used gifs is Kylo going, more. He used that gif a lot. It's very good. So thank you, Last Jedi, for gifting me in that moment. That's good. Great pick. Zavazos is specifically looking for like action based, so I think that's a good one. I've got to go back to the first Avengers movie. That movie it builds to that New York fight. It's so long and so good. We've seen so much in the MCU since then, so many more team ups and big fights and bigger teams, but I can still go back to that and enjoy that New York fight and the beats and the moments. It was thrilling at the time to see these characters interact with each other. And like I said, we've seen that a lot more since then, but I can still go back and like capture that feeling of like, wow, these big name superheroes are crossing over to movie, and it's good and it works and it earns all these moments. And I think I've shouted this out before on the show, but like, I love that it takes place during the day. Like, you just don't see that. You always see these big dramatic climactic fights at night or dusk or in the dark because dirt's kicked up everywhere, whatever reason. And, that sets a tone, and it's easier to hide effects in the dark. But this movie just pops so much more because of that, because it's one of the few with a big fight outdoors in the daylight. And it's perfectly crafted. I've got no notes, nothing to prove here. This is a perfect action hero sequence. Still one of my favorite fights in the MCU. So that, I think it's the moment that sold all of us on the MCU, right? Like, we liked all the movies leading up to it. I won't speak for everybody, but I enjoyed to some extent all of Phase 1 when I saw them. But the Avengers was like, oh, we can do this. Like, we can successfully cross these characters over and build to bigger stories and have teases, and no one gets lost in the shuffle, and all the characters get their moments to shine. And it's kind of the first time we saw that. And yeah, that climax though, I love it. So good.
It's an excellent point about Avengers. Avengers really is the make or break. If Avengers had even just been okay, I don't know if the MCU becomes what it does. But because Avengers is so good and nails it just how it needs to, it turns it into what it is today, where now we've got plans, through 2025 at this point. and including Avengers: Secret Wars. I told you all. But
well, okay, you did call it. You've been saying Secret Wars for a long time, but on top of that, Andrew, you have promised us that Hugh Jackman is going to be reprising his role as Wolverine. I believe you even said in new footage, not flashbacks, but I will give it to you no matter what. If we see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine in the MCU, I don't know. I'll give you kudos. You can bet some money on it if you want. Like, I think you're insane for this prediction, but you're standing by it, huh?
2 years ago, would you have said you'd ever see Patrick Stewart in the MCU?
No.
Exactly. Don't doubt me, Chris.
Remains
but no,
to be seen. We'll see.
It does. We'll see. We'll see it 3.5 years from now if we've gotten there or not. But no, I there's a lot of great third acts in the MCU. I think The Dark Knight has a great third act. I think the third act of that movie is really good. You even look at its inspiration, Heat. I think Heat has a great third act, where the kind of culmination of these characters comes together. You think of a lot of movies, the movies that are quote unquote seen as a lot of movies that are greatest of all time. Those third acts almost always hit and create, really wrap the story up and make it even more compelling. And
what do you think about like Mad Max Fury Road? I feel like the entire movie is a third act, right? Like,
I don't think that's an incorrect statement. Obviously, I think for me, there is a rest before the kind of climax. You get that moment where Max kind of like
turn around.
Yeah, where he's like, we have to go back. Like that to me is where you really kick into the climax. But really, it's just so much ongoing at all times. And it's so weird because I recently rewatched Mad Max and Road Warrior. Didn't watch Beyond Thunderdome yet. But I rewatched those two just because I had some time and was just kind of sitting around, which is every day. But it's interesting to watch those two because Mad Max is very much like we're on the brink of the collapse. Like the collapse is coming. Like you're not Fury Road in the first Mad Max. You're kind of like things are getting increasingly worse, and we're having a harder and harder time controlling it. And then the ending of it, which is where I don't know if you've seen them. I don't want to spoil it for you, but the ending kind of propels you. Actually. The ending kind of propels you into Road Warrior, and that's where you kind of get full. That's with the modified cars and the guys wearing the weird BDSM costumes, and you get all of that with Road Warrior, which is why that's an instance where I think people view Road Warrior as a little bit higher regarded than Mad Max is, because Road Warrior is where it kind of takes the concept and crystallizes it. But all of those movies, especially Road Warrior, actually having just rewatched it, its third act is also just as insane. It's not as insane as Fury Road, but it's a very similar bonkers setup / chase that lands pretty well.
Good examples across the board, Andrew. The Dark Knight, that's another one I can go back to, watch it every time, and capture some of the feelings I had like the first time sitting in a theater watching that, especially that finale, like not just the whole third act, but the very last shot of the movie with Gary Oldman doing the voiceover, and you see Batman on the Batpod going up the on-ramp and his cape fluttering in the wind, and he says The Dark Knight, and bam, cuts the black title, The Dark Knight, and the music swells, and it's like you catch yourself like exhaling because like it's been building up, and it's like,
yep,
oh, it's over. Like it ends on such a exciting high note, and I feel it every time I go back and watch it. I'm going to throw one more out there, and this is not exactly what Savajda asked because he's talking about action climaxes, but I can't think of like favorite endings to a movie without thinking of Before Sunset, which is so different than all these movies we're talking about. But this is the middle movie of the Before trilogy by Richard Linklater, starring Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke. This second movie, I mean, it's hard to talk about why it's great without spoiling it for you. If you've never seen these movies, some of the best romantic movies of all time, some of Richard Linklater's best movies, some of the best movies about love and relationships. I mean, I can't praise them enough. The second movie ends with this great moment in this, I'm not gonna spoil it. This line is delivered, and then the screen like fades away, and you're like, perfect. That is, it leaves you like with this perfect feeling. That's a little bit ambiguous, but pushing in the right direction. It's hard to. I don't want to spoil it. It's a little hard to talk about without getting the details. But if you know, you know. If you've seen it, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen it, get that corrected as soon as possible. Excellent movies.
Criterion Collection. We'll be over by the time this airs. Never mind.
Oh, the sale.
I was gonna say the trilogy's on sale at Barnes and Noble, but that'll be done by the time this airs.
That happens like every 6 months. Just hang tight.
November. It'll come back in November.
Yeah. Friends don't let friends pay full price for Criterion Collections. That's for sure.
Anybody you know that buys Criterion for full price is, I believe, just uninformed and should be told that every July and November they have a 50% off sale of all Criterions, including new releases at Barnes & Noble. Additionally, if you sign up for Criterion's mailing list, you will find out that they quite often also do 50% off flash sales for in-stock items throughout the year.
How are we not sponsored by Criterion, Andrew?
I don't friggin' know, Chris. Jesus.
All right, just remember, while you're shopping for those Criterions and looking at sales, that maybe not every movie is great.
But all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. Follow him on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony. Thanks to Mitch for the music. Check him out on Twitter at I'm a Biggie Boy. And look for a SoundCloud link in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. It's the only way we're going to grow. And follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you.
And that's always cool to see. These movies, especially in yesteryear, had no problem making the women either, fodder or kind of let's find somewhere to put them before the big finale so all of our dudes can flex and be heterosexual. And it's... Sorry.
Thomas Jane Love, another alum of the show, a Mark Strong Award winner for his turn as Thomas. Turn as
Thomas Jane.
So good as Thomas Jane.
I agree. I think he's great. Did you know he's only 2 years older than Keegan Michael Key? Sorry. Did you know he's only 2 years older than Keegan Michael Key? Sorry. I realized my mistake immediately. Let me try that again. I could put my brother on blast right now for something he insists is fan service, but I won't do it. He insists the entire movie of Rogue One is fan service. The entire movie exists only as fan service. That's his hot take.
I mean, Darth Vader hallway scene. I think
that I would agree is fan service. I would not agree the existence of the whole movie is fan service. But he does think that. Because it's answering a question nobody needed answered. Basically, you don't need... Like, the idea that it's based off the idea that the Death Star was given a weakness on purpose to... Yeah, he thinks that basically the entire existence of the movie is just fan service.
Here's the thing.
I get it.
I kind of agree with it, but I wouldn't use the term fan service. Like, I agree. Is it necessary? No. Is anybody really asking that question? No. But there's nothing wrong with adding a ripple to a previous movie that doesn't.
Well, now I'm never going to hear the end of it, Chris. Thanks. But
well, I won't put this on the episode, so he'll never know that I kind of agree.
Perfect.
With him.
Excellent. Put it after the credits. You won't hear it. But